We appreciate you staying with us on TMI. This is a very promising Thursday. I'm joined by two gentlemen. From my immediate left is Professor Omoho Adeleye, is the Deputy Chairman, Medical Advisory Committee. Thank you for coming on the program, Prof.
Appreciate you.
Great. Also joined with Prof on the program this morning is Comrade Austin Osakwe. He's the Executive Director, Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers.
We also need to mention that Comrade Osakwe is a member of the committee set up by the state government to respond to the pandemic now known as COVID-19. Gentlemen, let's get straight to it. Let me begin with Prof. You and I spoke here about 3 Thursdays ago, if I'm not mistaken, and we talked about many of these issues regarding this pandemic. As it stands right now, it will appear we are beginning to slide, for want of better words, into community-level infection. Isn't that where we are right now?
Yes. We got into the community-level transmission early enough. The interesting thing was this. Initially, there were doubts as to whether the infection would come into the country. But the health system was fairly vigilant enough. We picked the first case. Not necessarily the first case that came into Nigeria, but the first case that we picked. There is no way of knowing by the face, but it was good enough because it helped to slow down the rate of progression. It's unlikely there were many cases at that time. But let me make this very clear. Notice that when that first case was picked, a few other persons were quickly screened and identified, and then those who were in contact with those people that were in contact with the first case. That was the beginning of community transmission. Community transmission simply means that somebody who does not have a travel history transmitting the infection to another person who also does not have a travel history. So it is happening within the country. So that is where we are, and that's the big task we have in our hands just now to control.
Let's talk about that task. A lot of persons would quickly point to contact tracing.
Yes.
How well, in your judgment, are we doing with contact tracing?
Well, thank you very much. The first thing is to even realize that contact tracing needs to be done and urgently. At that level of urgency is the big question. The infection doesn't obey governance, doesn't obey systems. It just goes on. So it is governance that should alter that transmission of infection. If answering your question, how well are we doing? It has different answers in different states. Lagos State is doing very well. It can be better, but it's doing extremely well. Because Lagos State is going out for any person who has signs, symptoms that suggest COVID-19, to test them, identify them, isolate them. But there are states that are doing almost nothing as far as testing is concerned. There are those who are waiting for the federal government to come all the way down to their domain to set up systems. No, states should own the system that will ensure that community transmission is stopped or arrested as much as possible. The federal government should give technical support, guidance, regulation, and so on and so forth. But states should have ownership. Local government should have ownership. People, individuals should have ownership and take responsibility for ensuring that transmission does not take place from man to man, human to human.
Let me turn to Comrade Osakwe now. You have your ear on the street as well. Incidentally, you're an insider on the level. People are still saying, look, we know we have to fight this virus, but we have to stay alive to do the fighting. We are not getting palliatives. Food is not getting to us. Money is not getting to us. We're hearing about several initiatives here and there by state government, by the federal government. What exactly are we dealing with? Is it about death of resources or simply a matter of a systemic problem?
Well, this is the tricky part of this entire gamut of problems associated with the pandemic. Clearly, people want to stay alive.
Right.
Also, this is novel. We have never had to confront a pandemic of this nature. There were cries of Ebola was coming and it was quickly arrested. So people also felt that, well, what is this hue and cry about the coronavirus? It's not going to get to us. there are many who are also still in denial. Some maintain that it's a scam. But we now know that it's not a scam. We know that it is real and it is here with us. And according to Prof, community transmission has set in. What that means is that you are not sure of your neighbor. You are not sure of even the people with you in the same household. Now, but you have asked a very potent question. What is it about? Is it about the need to survive, to avoid hunger, starvation, or to stay alive in terms of observing the regulations and ensuring that you are not infected by the virus?
Right.
Straight away, I'll say there's no straight answer. But we now need to confront the issue of palliatives, because there are a lot of misconceptions, and I think that those who were charged with the responsibility of handling the issue of palliatives did not also help the matter. First, understand what the palliative is about. It's not a national cake sharing exercise. A palliative is something given to support those who have been affected by the measures put in place to combat this spread.
Right.
So it is targeted at what they now call the poorest of the poor, what we like to romantically refer to as the vulnerable. Two questions. How do you identify? What are the criteria for identifying the poorest of the poor? And where are they so that you can reach them there? I think that there's a lot of gap in that area. But let's be sure, the problems associated with this pandemic concern everybody. If you are not infected, you'll be impacted. Those who are not infected may still be infected if they do not very scrupulously abide by regulations. So the point must be made, therefore, that you need to put a system in place that will draw up criteria of who are the poorest of the poor. Two, how do you reach them? Don't forget that government does not have the resources unless we want to deceive ourselves, and government wants to deceive itself. The first thing government needs to do is to send a clear message that the resources are not there to get to everybody. That's what informs, up till now, individuals, corporate bodies, bringing in support by way of foodstuffs, medicaments, and so on, to underline the fact that government does not have the resources to reach everyone.
But has government ever been transparent enough to buttress that message? That it doesn't have the resources enough?
I don't think it's the issue of transparency. I think it's the issue of structure, the issue of communication.
Right.
The communication needs to be clear, and those in government must do this, and do this very urgently. Because we are beginning to hear outcries. I watched a video recently. A community gathered, their elders gathered, put a few bags of rice and some other things in the middle, and they were saying, come and see, this is what government brought to the entire community. That's a misconception. Government didn't bring that to the community as far as I know. What I know is that community leaders were identified as channels to reach the most vulnerable in their midst, because they know them.
Right.
But unfortunately, like the way we do every other thing in this country, they received those things and thought that it was for everybody. So if you were given 20 bags of rice for a community, what made you think that that was to go around everyone? So we need to first drive the message that it is not for everybody. Number two, the fact that people are giving to support government in this exercise underlines the fact that government cannot do it alone. Therefore, for instance, in our committee, we have a quadrant that talks about we care. What does that underline? That more than ever before, we must love our neighbors. We must cater to the needs of our neighbors. There are weak ones amongst us, there are strong ones amongst us. The irony is that, once again, the system hijacked the palliative regime put in place, and the strong are benefiting from this more than the weak. So government and all of those who are involved must ensure that they take these palliatives directly to the target beneficiaries, and that's the poor. And look, there are urban poor and there are rural poor.
It's becoming more complicated by the day.
No, yeah, of course. Because essentially, look at it. Now, let's tell ourselves some home truths. The workers who are at home, the question is, are they receiving salaries? I am aware that by 24th, government in Edo State has paid salaries to all workers. So, if you are at home, you are receiving salaries. What is it you are doing now at home? Or you are not able to do at home now that you were doing when you were not home? In fact, being at home now even gives you more time to do a few other things to augment your salary. So clearly, workers in the civil service, teachers, all of those who are still receiving salary, whether they are at home or not, are not within the brackets of the vulnerable.
So it's unrealistic for them to be looking for.
Exactly. It is the way we do things in this time. We need to change the narrative. And I think that government needs to be bold enough to tell the people what it is without caring whose ox is God. Because what is important eventually is that posterity will remember us for what we do this period. The food or whatever it is, defined now as palliative, the stimulus package, goes to the poorest of the poor, and we must ensure. If church leaders are there, they have a duty to ensure that only the poorest within the church get it. If the imams are there, they must ensure that only the poorest within the mosque get it. If traditional rulers are there, natural rulers across communities in the state, they must ensure that only the poorest of the poor amongst them get it. So it is a collective responsibility. Government needs to list out this criteria and communicate this message. Then stakeholders will now drive it to the appropriate quarters.
Just before I come back to Prof, I want to push you on one more issue. A lot of persons, I mean, you talked about telling ourselves the home truth just a while ago. A lot of persons say, look, this is an election year in Edo State. Politicians and, of course, even governments are looking at the optics. So whatever they are doing about the COVID-19 is more cosmetic or artificial than you can imagine. Isn't there a problem with the motive in the first instance and the extent to which we're making these efforts?
You see, this is the issue. Any politician, I know that politicians are always look forward to the next election.
Right.
But every politician right now should know that this is the wrong time to play politics. And the people are not stupid anyway. They know the motive behind whatever it is you do. Yes, they may be hungry enough now to accept it from you, but when they have left, they know exactly that there is no empathy in this, that there's no altruism in this. So my advice is that politicians should not play politics with this. In any case, I think that what has become clear, as far as I know, is that this government has refused to play politics with this, and that appears to be creating problems for it. But that's the way to go. First, it was said that the committee that should be in charge of distribution must be all-embracing. Politicians, as much as possible, must stay clear, so that they do not end up giving these things to party members. If that is done, it defeats the entire exercise. And I am aware that the first one wasn't foolproof, wasn't 100%, because we still know that there were politicians who attempted to hijack the process, and some of them succeeded. And it is incumbent on the administration to ensure that those persons are brought to book because they know them. Having said that, this is the time for politicians, we know them, to also come out and chip in something. And you don't need to make a bone out of this. If you publicize it, it must be for the purpose of encouraging others to do same.
Right.
So identify a community. Take these things there and give to those who deserve them. And there are agencies, there are structures within the communities to identify this. For instance, somebody who lives in a 3-bedroom flat, another person lives in what they call you face me, I beat you kind of arrangement. And then the one who lives in the face me, I face you is struggling for it, but the strong person in the 3-bedroom flat runs ahead of him to go and collect, and he says it's our share of the national cake. That's a disservice. So my advice is that we have big business people, we have big-time politicians, we have those whom God has blessed. This is the time to put your hand into your pocket, take part of your resources, and do the one that you can do to support government. And people are doing that already. It is to encourage them to do more. But it will be a lie, and a very unfortunate one, for government or any other person to give the impression that, one, government has the resources to reach everyone, and two, that this thing is for everybody. It can't be for everybody.
I'm going to put some issues right in front of you very soon. But Prof, at the risk of dragging you into politics here, rest assured I'm not going to do that. A sitting governor was interviewed a matter of days ago as to finding out how much of work they are doing regarding testing in his state. And he couldn't give precise response to that. He kept talking about an app that has been developed in his state. So what the app does, we still can't figure. For governors like that, what does it say about their preparedness to fight this pandemic within the confines of their states?
All right, thank you very much. So what you have said now paints a clear picture that there are different levels to which different state governors have mainstreamed the control of COVID-19.
Certainly.
I would say that it may not necessarily be out of wanting to do harm,
Yes.
but plain ignorance. There are different levels of knowledge, education, technical support, and code that states have access to. What we need to do as a nation is that federal authorities should identify areas where there are weaknesses in the states and move quickly to give support. Something like what happened in Kano. It was clear that there was a system weakness, and the federal government mobilized resources, material, monetary, human, and co. Bam, into the state. And right now, Kano State is feeling the heat of a control system. In the state that you talked about, and similar states, that's a loud explanation that there is ignorance, there is carelessness, perhaps irresponsibility, perhaps. In that situation, we should move. The federal government should send resources down there to address the problem. And if necessary, declare a state of emergency at governor's level. Because for the governor to make such an utterance, it does mean that there is political weakness, it means there's governance weakness, it means there is health systems weakness, it means that there is massive ignorance in that state. It means, therefore, that that kind of system requires people who will intervene and change the scenario. That needs to be done urgently.
Before that disruption happens, which you have obviously suggested, the NCDC, that's the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, is now saying governors of states should not be ashamed or uncomfortable to have confirmed cases, regardless of the volume, as it were, in their states. What does that say about the situation we're dealing with? Because it will appear there's something the NCDC knows.
All right. Excellent. I like that question. Two things emerge here. There is an aspect that deals with ignorance, which I touched on moments ago.
Apparently.
There is the other dimension that is deliberate concealment and irresponsibility. I dare say that we should be suspecting malice. The point is this. There is a pandemic. That's the word. The world is affected. If it happens to your neighbor, you are at risk. We're saying that every country, every state, every local government area, even down to households, should take action and take responsibility. Why would a state be doing such a thing as suspected concealment? You should not even be suspected to be concealing information or deliberately suppressing screening of your citizens or trying to make it look as if you don't have cases. It is of no political, health, economic advantage whatsoever. Lagos State is still the epicenter in Nigeria, and the openness is open. In other words, you are not only open, but that your openness, you see, it's one thing to be honest, another to be seen to be honest. That's the example we are seeing in Lagos State. It is open, and centers for collection of specimens are being set up in so many places to increase the testing capacity. And then you have some states that want to suppress the number of specimens taken out, suppress the number of tests done. No, that should not be. In fact, if I were in a position to advise Mr. President, such a thing should be investigated urgently, and in that kind of state, we should talk about the state of emergency. If the allegations are proven to be correct. In any case, we need to step up testing, we need to step up interventions to stop the transmission of this infection. Political leaders, governors, and co must take all the actions necessary to have ownership of the system within their state and not wait for the federal government.
Nigerians are believed to not be very forthcoming when it comes to personal information. For example, people travel, they come back, they act as if they've never been anywhere. Some give you half information, or what some persons would call half truth. All of these naturally should have ramification for the fight against this pandemic, right?
Very true. Yes. So it has different levels of ramification. So pick the health worker, for example. Let's start from that micro level. It's clerking a patient. That clerking means asking questions, getting information. And the patient or client denies recent travel history. When you see that kind of situation, it puts the health worker at risk, because the health worker is likely to then take a decision that will shift away from a high risk to perhaps relatively lower risk. Good enough, we have sent an alert across the country, and there is that awareness now that even if somebody claims not to have had a travel history, because community transmission is now the main thing, travel history is no longer as important as it used to be. That said, in states that do not yet have cases, or where the cases are still very few, 1, 2 cases, it still remains very important, because some of the people coming into the state maybe are persons from the high socioeconomic class who found their way somehow around boundaries and eventually got into the state. So it still remains important to still ask. Community transmission may not be strong in such states. For now, may not, I say. So travel history remains important. Implications are that if such a person withholds information, the risk of transmission to health workers, the risk of transmission to the community, the risk of transmission to anybody and everybody becomes high. The counsel, therefore, is that if you have had a travel history in the past 14 days, even 1 month, please declare it. Let people know. It doesn't attract, it doesn't mean that you are a bad person. After all, we used to boast that I'm just coming from abroad. People used to do that. But why will you deny it now? Just let it be known. So you can be tested, your health status can be determined, and you can be helped. And your people, your significant relatives and environment, and people in your environment can be protected also.
Okay. Let me come back to you now, Comrade Osakwe. We've experimented with the curfew. Would you say at this point we're seeing the desired outcome?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. The reasons that informed the imposition of the curfew are as real as ever. And I think that what really happened was that the moment this partial lockdown took effect, a lot of the activities during the day shifted to the night time. Okay. And because night is under the cover of darkness, the regulations that could be enforced during the day just went free during the night, and the government needed to act fast. And so 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's ending today. At the first instance, we expect that today the governor will address the state and let us know whether is going to extend that period or whether to do otherwise. But as to its effectiveness, it is. But we need to appeal to security agencies of whatever hue that yes, there's a curfew. Number 2, the people who have become victims didn't cause this by themselves. In fact, nobody is responsible for this pandemic. It just came on us. So if security agencies arrest people who have breached the curfew, please let them treat them with humaneness. There's a pandemic, but it has not suspended the fundamental liberties.
But that was also to ask you at this point. Did the government specify prescribe a protocol for those who would flout this curfew? Because we were hearing things like some persons being asked to pay 100,000, others being asked to stay with them the whole night. Were there specifics as to protocols to be observed? The truth of the matter is that
all of those actions by security agencies that involve pecuniary considerations, they were on their own. Those were not directives from government. It was not a revenue-raising thing. The worst they could have done, and I agree that I do not have a full representation of what sanctions could be for those who breached that curfew.
Right.
But we expect that the worst the security agencies could have done was to first caution the individuals and find out where they were going and let them off, or if in severe cases, you could detain them there till the next morning. That's the worst I expect. But what we find, and we have some recorded incidents of where there was actual extortion, and then people being told to do all kinds of things, roll on the ground and all that. Where did that come from? It is not a suspension of the fundamental liberties. And I'm happy that the NBA and several civil society organizations have engaged security agencies in this respect. So, in my opinion, the curfew is achieving the objectives for which it was imposed, and I think that it should be extended for now. Let me also now mention that as we speak in Edo State, mobile screening centers have been put all over the place.
Yes, we've seen many of them.
Screening is going on,
right,
where individuals are cleared, they are asked questions that will point as to whether they be persons of interest or whether or not. So from there, cases will be escalated for testing, and testing is going on. The UBTH is heavily involved in testing, ISTH is heavily involved in this at one stage or the other. So testing is on, and that's what we'll explain. Yesterday, we had 7 new cases. That appears to be the highest single recorded number of cases per day.
Right. And
we need to let the people know that the spike will continue. It's only evidence that there is increased screening and testing, and people should prepare themselves for that.
Okay.
Then we also need to mention that it is not a total lockdown in Edo.
Apparently.
It is a partial lockdown, which brings us back to the issue of, oh, they're not giving us this, they're not giving us that. People are still moving. It's just that movements are restricted. Certain big businesses are asked to shut down for now. Small and medium scale here and there are still operating.
Sure.
And again, we need to send a message to security agencies. If certain categories of businesses have not been asked to shut down, don't shut them down with a view to extorting them. So economic activities are still on. So it is the poorest of the poor. There's a story of widows being called out to get certain things, and then somebody identified the woman who was there. I said, "But madam, you are married. I know your husband." And he said, "Look, don't say that. I'm worse than those who don't have husband. You call that man." So the point I'm making is that it is for the poorest of the poor, not just the poor. We need to identify them, and we need to place. Look, who wants to be described as poor?
Apparently.
If you know that these palliatives are for the poorest of the poor, and you are not poor, you don't fall into that category and you are scampering for it, it's an invitation to poverty.
Apparently,
people need to know that.
This is a conversation we will continue to advance as far as the battle against this COVID-19 continues. But lastly, just before we tie it up with this discussion altogether, Prof, let's make you a judge in your own cause now. A lot of people have been talking about, as it were, incentive and motivation for those on the front lines. What's your take on that?
Well, nobody would say that he doesn't like something good. Incentivizing health workers is a very, very good thing to do, and it's done worldwide. It's just that we have not been prioritizing it. Hazard allowance has been very, very abysmally low, and so people had ignored it. That's all that has happened. But you can tell that across the country, health workers are actively there. Look at the UBTH. There are doctors, nurses, and who remain right there in the isolation ward morning, evening, night. Some not going to see their families are committed to doing that work. Those are the kind of people we're talking about. And of course, a few more people, and even general health workers talking generally, because all of us face the risk, but at different levels. Incentivization, yes, it's good, because it will help people to appreciate the fact that, look, I am being valued. Suicide is setting in now among health workers in some countries because of the stress, the mental stress of knowing that you are facing a high risk for your own life and for the lives of your family. And the government in those countries do not seem to be doing what is right, to even show some appreciation. So incentivization, very good for health workers.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Omoho Adeleye, for coming on the program. I also want to thank, I was going to call you Professor.
We can't go without reminding our people
that
the regulations are still there.
Yes.
Please wash your hands in running water for about 20 seconds. Do that as many times as possible during the day. If you must go out of your house, put on a face mask. When you are anywhere, observe the social distance. And we have tried this morning to show by example that there must be social distance. Yes, Prof had to insist, because it's important that we send that message.
Exactly.
He's one of the custodians, one of the frontliners. So we thank them. And then, of course, as much as possible, this is crucial, care for the other person out there, because we are all in this together.
All right. Thank you so much, Comrade Austin Osakwe, for coming to talk to us about these issues this morning. We do appreciate that. All right, gentlemen, you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll take a quick break. We're back here with a second discussion in a bit. Stay with us.